we should not be part of the metro area down here. We live a rural lifestyle, and, things like the 5 kilometre rule, everything's 5 kilometres from everything down here. So if you're trying to look at takeaway models and things like that for businesses, it's just not possible.
As we go around speaking to people in the hospitality world through the pandemic, we find people at all different stages of their restaurant life. Some people have had businesses for decades. Some people have just launched new businesses. Others are waiting for a restaurant to be built. Simone Watts is in the latter camp, and she's had such an interesting journey over the past few months. Simone, I confess to feeling a little bit jealous when the second lockdown started and you were traipsing around New South Wales.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky.
Yeah, you were. I'm so happy to have the chance to talk to you today and to hear about your journey and what's happening for you at the moment. Put us in the picture.
I was pretty lucky a couple of months ago to have an amazing trip up north. We got across the border just before things closed, which was always sort of planned, but we ended up staying up there a lot longer than we had expected to. But prior to that, I moved home to the peninsula after living up in the Daintree for the last 3 years, having an incredible life up there. It's an amazing place. And when I got back, I came back sort of to be a bit closer to family. When you're isolated up there, it's a different life. So coming back here was really important, and I decided to. I had the opportunity to help open an amazing restaurant and a brilliant property over at Cape Schanck, and was over there sort of helping with the preliminary stages of all the planning and working casually at the time, and then COVID. So when COVID happened, I was sort of one of the first to be laid off back in March, and for the first time in 15 years of cooking, I was unemployed, and it was such an unusual feeling to have. I've worked since I was 13 years and 2 months, whatever the legal age of working was. My dad had me out practicing my handshake so I could go and get a job when I was. So I've always worked, and this thought of being unemployed was just it hit the ego a little bit, but also just being a chef is your life, and finding purpose without that was all of a sudden pretty challenging.
That's so interesting. So when you say you were laid off, were you laid off from the casual job that you picked up in the meantime waiting for Barragunda to be built, or is the Barragunda project itself on hold? Where did you actually lose? Yeah.
So I was working casually at another restaurant on the peninsula, and so Barragunda is still certainly moving forward. It's just going a little bit slower than we'd expected, with obviously council approval and stuff. Everything's been put on hold. But as far as the farm goes itself, I think, after sort of licking my wounds of not having a job and, not being able to cook and everything, I suddenly realised, hang on, I've been given this amazing opportunity to be part of Barragunda from the ground up. And, we've been given time that we never had before. And I sort of, had to snap out of that pity case and go, how am I going to use this time to really benefit both the farm and sort of my mental health and the greater community on the peninsula and the environment.
Okay, so let's just pull back a little bit. And for people who don't know the Mornington Peninsula, how would you describe it?
It's a beautiful little hub of community. We're just so fortunate that it's so produce rich. We've got everything from, wine to small scale farms to dairies, but then you've sort of got the front beach and the back beach. So as far as fishing goes, you've got, a whole range of different seafood in the bay, and then on the back beaches, you have the same. And then we've obviously just got this magnitude of incredible restaurants down here doing a variety of amazing things. And, it's been so beautiful with this time off to see so many restaurants adapting and doing amazing things, but also utilising the time to really, I think, connect with the environment, which has been, I think, one of the best things to come out of COVID. I've seen, restaurants that, such as Tedesco, which was already just so incredibly beautiful, have taken this time to create a market garden, in a biodynamic market garden, in the back space of the property. And then Merrick's General Store is doing a similar thing, and there's been, amazing little sort of not-for-profit organisations. My beautiful friend Julie, who is the kitchen gardener over at Montalto, has started this lovely little business called Seeds Are Free, and she collects heirloom varieties of seeds, and you essentially send her a little postage paid envelope, and she sends you this variety of incredible heirloom seeds back with the notion that you will grow them, you will save some seeds yourselves, and you will pass them on.
Wow, I'm doing that.
Yeah, you should. But that sort of, I think that business, or that not-for-profit little thing that she's doing, is a good example of what I feel like the Peninsula is. It's this warm little family that likes to share, likes to connect to the environment, but yeah, still sort of have a little bit of quirk, have a bit of fun with it as well.
Okay, it's so interesting that you say that, because the other stuff that's coming out of the peninsula at the moment is a little bit different in tone. So there's a business owner down that way who has launched a court case against the Victorian government about the curfew, saying that it violates human rights. And there is also quite a lot of disgruntlement from restaurateurs that the Mornington Peninsula is counted as part of Metro Melbourne, which means that it's subject to the heaviest lockdown and is not able to reopen as other parts of regional Victoria are. So it's so interesting that you can be living in the same region but have such different experiences. And I suppose it speaks to the pandemic generally, where yes, we're all going through it, but it does impact people in such different ways, and I guess give rise to different pathways and different ways that people respond to it. It can be, they can be so divergent.
Oh, for sure. Look, I think, that definitely needs to be recognised, and sometimes my, cup half full, happy-go-lucky attitude is definitely not to say that there is businesses here that aren't struggling incredibly. And I, although, I don't want to get too political in court case sort of scenarios, but I agree massively that we should not be part of the metro area down here. We live a rural lifestyle, and things like the 5 kilometre rule. Everything's 5 kilometres from everything down here. So if you're trying to look at takeaway models and things like that for businesses, it's just not possible. Like there's many businesses that are still doing it and doing it reasonably successfully, but that's because they're using their staff to deliver everything. Not many we can't pick things up like you can in the city. And the reality is that there's just really not that many people down here. I can go for a stroll on the beach and only walk past 1 or 2 people, and most of the towns are dead. So to be considered metro, it is quite unusual. The population just really isn't that dense down here, and we do live a very rural lifestyle.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about what it's like for you, what it's like to be a chef. You spoke about, that chef is really a big part of your identity. You've been doing it for a long time, and suddenly that was taken away from you. Just sort of put us in the picture of your mindset. Like, what is Simone the chef like?
Look, like I said, sort of in the first couple of weeks of the lockdown back in March, I think I was really naive to how long this would go on, and I thought it would be just a little while. So I kind of took it as a little bit of a break, and baked way too much sourdough. And as my partner said, if anyone asked what I was doing, he just said putting shit in jars, which was pretty true, to be honest. I think did a lot of preserving, did a lot of baking, and then went, hang on a minute. This is not just a break. This is going to go on for quite a while. And, I was in a strange position where Barragunda was still going forward, and I didn't want to take on another major chef role, but casual work just was non-existent. So it was asking, how, when you're a chef, you're used to working very hard. And I sort of touched on this with you before of, for me, I started recognising, especially at night, because we're so used to working nights as chefs. And I was sitting around at night. I don't have a TV. I've never had a TV. And it was like, what do I do with my time? And I was noticing that I was really anxious. And I think, for quite a while now, since not working nights, I've noticed that my body is conditioned to building up a certain amount of adrenaline, and that's to push through services. That's what we do as chefs. But when you stop doing that, your body it naturally still builds up that adrenaline. It's like if for 15 years it's used to that sort of fight situation of going, not fight, but that situation of going into service and being really busy and being on all the time. And when that's turned off, your body still has that sort of chemical buildup of adrenaline. And if you don't recognize that, and if you don't learn how to use it in a different way, it manifests into anxiety. And I was feeling quite anxious and quite stressed and sort of, like, is there something wrong with me? But the reality was that, I wasn't working and I wasn't out, I didn't have an outlet for that adrenaline. So, and then, so from that side of things, I think exercising and getting outside is my answer to how I try to sort of deal with that now. Dusk walks, so before things go dark, going for a nice big walk, connecting to the environment is really important. But then as a chef, there's that creative side as well. And, you've always got ideas popping up in your head of things that you want to do. And when you don't have a kitchen, when you don't have a platform to get rid of those, your mind can get quite full. So I think, for me, that's probably been the hardest part of not having a kitchen or being in a kitchen is that circle of ideas and concepts. And my poor partner is getting meals cooked for him all the time that I guess some people might be excited about. He's like, I really don't want to eat this giant course of beautiful food that looks like it should be in a restaurant. Can I just have pizza and a beer?
Oh my God. Funny problem to have.
Yeah.
So the trip that you had around New South Wales, you said that you'd planned that. Was that part of your strategy to get into a different headspace?
Well, it was sort of just planned prior to COVID because it matched up with some holidays and stuff. But my intention with it was always to visit a series of farms up and along the way and connect with some people up north that are on the same wavelength as me with regenerative agriculture, and sort of work on a few different farms and visit some people that I haven't had a chance to that have supplied me in the past, which mostly happened, which was great. But at the same time, it was sort of at that point mid-COVID, and people were fairly reluctant to have extra people on their farms. And also we were with the Victorian number plates driving up through New South Wales, getting fists shaken at us. And, so it was not the easiest or best time to be like on this romantic notion road trip of connecting with a lot of people. But in saying that, we still had a really amazing time and saw a lot of things that we haven't seen before. And I think, like I said to you, we saw some beautiful things, but it also really opened to my eyes to how sad a lot of the agriculture is in Australia and how far we have to go in trying to make a difference in that.
Well, tell me about the bad stuff first. So when you say things that were sad, what kind of things are you talking about?
Well, basically a lot of dead land, a lot of desertification, a lot of, poor mass scale industrial farming where, we just, there was a particular spot on the border of New South Wales and Queensland where we had this amazing Gondwana rainforest that we were camping in and hiking in. And on the fringe of that, there was these sprawls and sprawls of cattle farming where the soil was, it was dead. There was nothing left. There was no grass. And, these poor farmers are attempting to bring in or buy in grass and buy in water, and they spend hundreds and thousands, millions of dollars on these irrigation systems to try and to bring this land back. And on the other side of that, you had what that area once was, which was, incredible rainforest. And you just start going, man, what have we done to this country, and how can we start to, make a difference? And that's where, regenerative agriculture comes in, and what we're trying to do back here on the farm at Barragunda is quite similar to that. We're trying to trying to farm in sand essentially. But on either side of us, we have Greens Bush and Fingal National Park, and this opportunity to regenerate some pretty important habitat and get some love and health back into the soils that were cleared many years ago. And I think this time off has given me a chance to be a part of that, because to be a chef, I think, and not be some form of environmentalist is crazy, because it's our future in food and as humans as well. So to have a better understanding of that is being able to respect it and bring it into the spotlight as chefs. We have this voice to bridge the gap between farming and population through food. So if I can understand how farming practices happen better, I can tell that story better through my food. Joel Salatin, I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, had this quote that storytellers will lead their trades. And I just love that quote so much. I look at so many different successful people, and I see that with chefs that I admire the most in the way that they tell stories about whether it's the reasons that they're cooking stuff, or where the food is coming from. That connection and that ability to really tell a story, I think, connects us so much more.
Tell people who don't know who Joel Salatin is.
Joel Salatin's an American farmer who has sort of been at the forefront of regenerative farming for many, many years, and has an amazing group of different farms throughout America that work on sort of his same business model. So he goes out and consults and helps them to set up farms from everything from the costings to the layout of different holistic grazing methods, and a lot of that has been taken and followed in Australia as well.
One of the really mind-bending ideas of regenerative agriculture that I was chatting about recently with Grant Hilliard from Sydney Butcher and Providore Feather and Bone is this idea about farms, people thinking about farms more as 3D spaces. So rather than speaking of a field as 10 hectares, that you think about it, that it's actually, you think about you consider the depth of the soil as part of the area, and the arable area of a farm. And to me, just even that simple mind switch is so radical, and it speaks so clearly to the importance of soil and the fact that there's just, I just think about that cattle farm you're talking about on the edge of the rainforest, and you just think, well, that is such a product and such an outcome of thinking of this as a 2D space that you just use, and you just there's just cattle walking on a surface. Whereas if you have that mind shift of thinking about it as it extends below the surface of the ground, that it's just, you can't help but think about soil health and realize that everything springs from that.
Yeah. Look, I think it's a massive turning point in where we're going with farming, and something that I hadn't heard spoken about at all when I was younger. And moving forward, it has to be something that is considered in all forms of farming. And we have done some terrible things to our soils through mass industrial farming and the use of chemicals, and the effects that it's had not only on the soil but our health and our microbiome is pretty detrimental. And where it's so connected to food and what we eat. So for me, if I wasn't understanding the soil, then I'm not understanding my food. And if I'm not caring about the soil, I'm not caring about the end product of my food, but also the end product of the environment and the longevity of the environment and our careers and our lifestyle.
So tell me about this chef as storyteller idea. Like, why do you feel like stories are going to be so powerful as you go forward with Barragunda and your career as a chef?
That's a good question. Look, I think I've always, the shift for me in going from, say, working in the city to working in the country and being connected to my farmers was because I wanted to know where my food was coming from, and I wanted to know, the farmers and how they farmed. And I think, it goes back to the more you know about something, the more you're capable of respecting it. And, like you can put that on to, say, a person. If you've got a random stranger that you don't know, you perhaps don't trust or know or respect them because you don't know anything about them. So if you're a chef in a kitchen and you're cooking and you're taking your food out to a customer and you're telling them where it's from, how it's cooked, who the farmer is, not only are they going to eat a beautiful meal, but the respect that they then have for not only the farmer, but the earth and the environment gives that meal a much more holistic form of gratitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's about connecting the dots. It's like you see yourself as a really important link in connecting connecting all those dot points along a continuum, which starts with the soil and the farm, and then how that food's produced, and then it gets to you, and then you do this with it, and then you do that with it, and then you put it onto a plate and you take it out to the customer. So I suppose it's like if that story breaks down at any point, then disconnection follows. But I suppose you do really point to the consumer in this, and that it's really important for consumers to care enough to want to listen to that story. And I think there is such push and pull with that. I think that people are definitely more interested in where their food comes from, but then on the other hand, I think there is at times it's like, I just want something to eat. I don't want a narrative to go with it. I don't want to have to think about everything all the time. So I suppose I think some of it is about trust, isn't it? It's like that if I come to your restaurant, even if what I really want to focus on that day is, whatever occasion I'm celebrating or, whatever it is, that I trust you, that you've brought that to the table ethically. So I suppose it's about interest is a very important part of it. Trust is another very important part of it. And connection, of course, is what helps it all hang together and become, then that's the part of the food system that we build together. And I suppose we each carry more of the weight at different times.
Yeah, I think connection is such a key word in everything that's happening at the moment. I think often we take food for granted, and we're so lucky in Melbourne and Australia to have so many beautiful restaurants. I think we have become a little bit disconnected sometimes with where food is coming from, and we can sit down any night of the week and eat just ridiculously glorious food. But yeah, if we're not asking where that food is coming from and how, we still have that disconnect there. And if we don't know where that food is coming from and how it's raised, then we will continue, I think, to be a little bit disconnected and won't be able to move forward in better food systems and more ethical food systems.
So, what about someone who might say, oh, Simone, it's all very well for you down in your regional paradise, able to go and get your hands in the soil whenever you feel like it. What about me in the city? I've got my restaurant and I've got all my bills to pay and I've got my customers who just want some fried chicken. How can I have this bucolic experience and connect more with farms and the soil and all these things?
Do you have a backyard?
Well, I'm fortunate that I do have a very small backyard, but I guess not everybody does. But what can everybody do?
If you have a backyard, like I'm such an advocate for growing your own food, even if it's a little, pot plant of tomatoes. The joy of bringing new life into the world is, it does so much for the soul. And if you don't have a backyard, a balcony, or even a windowsill, save your leek bottoms and grow them on the windowsill. That new life and growth is an amazing thing. And you'd be surprised with a small backyard and a small amount of land how much food you can grow for yourself. I think, Australians, we love our grass. There's so much grass around that could be utilised for growing food. Front nature strips, community gardens. And look, Melbourne does community gardens really well, and that was sort of my next point. If you don't have access to a backyard yourself, try and source your local community garden, or places like Ceres are doing amazing things. But also, you've got Hussbacher and Matt and Joe about to launch this future food system and this urban farming notion in the middle of the city, which I'm so excited to see unravel. So I think there's going to be a turn and a change of different ways that people can grow their own food and have more closed loop systems within their house in an urban environment. It's certainly, it doesn't have to be rural to be growing your own food and being more connected to the environment.
That's such a good point. So for people who aren't aware, what Simone's talking about is environmentalist and florist Joost Bakker is collaborating with Matt Stone and Joe Barrett, who are two chefs until recently at Oak Ridge. They've just announced that they're leaving Oak Ridge, and they're setting up a house in Federation Square, which is, I guess it's a house, but it's also an ecosystem. So it's going to be demonstrating ways that we can live in built environments with a real connection to nature and and to grow a lot of our own food. So, yeah, it will be a fascinating social experiment to bear witness to, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of, really amazing live research that happens as we can observe them in their home as they live through this. So it's definitely something to look forward to. I love all the things you're saying. It also makes me think of a podcast I heard recently where it was about refugees and people seeking asylum who were living in pretty restricted accommodation, and it was a study into just giving each of them one pot plant and the difference that it made to them and to their mental state. And it was really quite profound that just that simple act of nurturing life was incredibly rewarding and beneficial, and just beyond what you might imagine just one little pot plant could be. There definitely is something sustaining. I guess it's really so basic, but we definitely don't always take advantage of any small opportunity to nurture life in our very urban environments these days.
Yeah, for sure. Look, getting outside, what it does for the mind, the body, and the internal health as well is, for me, there's no cure like it. The saying, stopping to smell the roses, although I don't really like roses very much, maybe stop to smell the wattle blossoms or something like that instead, it's so much more profound than the way we use that saying, really taking the time to stop and get outside and experience nature. It's the most beneficial way to increase your health, I think. And I think during this, lockdown period, people have really seen the benefit and hold on to that time that they have outside so much more. And I guess, those simple walks, people are really taking the time to take things in. And, I think connecting to nature and asking different questions when you're out and about, what is this plant? For me, it's always, what is this plant? Can I eat it? But, I think, when people are outside, if they do want to connect more to nature and they do want to have that feeling like you were talking about from, a rural environment to a city environment, okay, perhaps it's not all farming and all edible, but, just when you're walking, asking questions, is this plant native? Is this not native? You slowly start having this different appreciation and this different grasp and understanding of the environment, and you do feel so much closer to it.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great. That's such a great question. Is it native? Is it not native? That's really so simple, but it's such a key way that we can connect with Australia. And was that plant here before I was?
Yeah.
So how are you going with the daily rhythm and the adrenaline? Do you feel like this is something I'm wondering about a lot at the moment. Like, what do you think the gearing back up is going to be like? Do you think people are going to be resistant to those rhythms that they were in before? Or do you think everyone, all those chefs are going to be, they're just going to slot back into that, those peaks and troughs and those adrenaline driven rhythms?
Yeah. Look, I think it's going to be hard. I don't think there's going to be slotting in. I think it's going to be a very sort of slow, adapting race back to what it was. And I think we're probably going to have to ask the general public to be kind for a while, because, chefs have had a bit of time off. Not everyone, a lot of people. But when I heard Ben the other day saying he was doing that, Ben Shuri saying that he was doing 100-hour weeks, I suddenly felt very lazy. So, no, some people are still doing massive hours. But, I mean, the restaurants that have been a bit slower and haven't been able to sort of open or adapt to some of the takeaway models, when things are going back and they're opening up, I think, they're going to be opening up with less staff. They will be, putting new ideas together, and egos and confidence are probably going to be a little bit low, and it's going to take a while to get that that feeling and rhythm back up. So, when you do have those initial diners coming through, sometimes that, they might wait longer for food, or it might not be exactly what they expected because the chef has, changed their style or their mindset a little bit during this time. So I think, critiquing and judging and all of, your TripAdvisor reviews and all that sort of stuff, I think it will be nice if people, just be a little bit kind to chefs when we reopen, because it will be, it's been a rough ride for a lot of people. But for me at the moment, sort of, my rhythm and adrenaline and what I'm working on has changed quite a bit. I was lucky when I got back from my trip. I've been hired essentially at Barragunda as a farmhand, which is pretty cool. My contract says farmhand now, so I've gone from chef to actual farmer, which is really cool. And I've taken over a couple of the market garden blocks and building up the soil health at the moment, and have all of my little seedlings in the greenhouse there, which will be going in. So we're going to be farming the land over spring and summer, which is really great. And I love getting my hands dirty and, like I said, being part of the project from the ground up. The restaurant itself is still in approval processes. So once that kicks off, we'll go into construction. But we're looking at a few different avenues of some pop-up events over summer with the produce that I'll be growing, which is pretty cool. It's the first time I will have actually been able to use all of my own produce that I've grown in the menus itself. So pretty excited about that. But it's really hard to make plans for this. How are you supposed to make plans for pop-up events and things like that when you're not really entirely sure what that's going to look like? So I think that's one of the hardest things that restaurants and chefs are dealing with at the moment is, things change every day. So how are we meant to plan for these reopenings and staffing and ordering and menu, concepts and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it is very, very challenging and I think exhausting, and kindness, as you say, is going to be important for everybody. I think, people that work in restaurants are going to need to be kind to themselves and to one another. Like, everyone is going to be getting back up to speed, and what it means to be, at speed might be quite a different thing to what it was before. So, but yeah, we can never have too much kindness to the soil, yes, and to one another and to ourselves. Simone, it's been an absolute pleasure to check in with you and find out what's happening. And I think the pandemic has given so many people different opportunities to consider where they're at and what they want to do and the energy that they want to bring to the things they have planned for the future. Personally, I cannot wait to experience what you're going to create at Barragunda, and I wish you all the best with getting those seedlings in the ground and watching everything thrive.
Thank you. I'm going to need it, I think. Thanks so much for chatting.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.